السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله على إحسانه والشكر له على توفيقه وامتنانه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله تعظيما لشأنه، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله داعي إلى رضوانه وعلى آله وأصحابه وإخوانه. أما بعد، لكل شيء إذا تم نقصانه فلا يغر بطيب العيش إنسانه. هي الأمور كما شهدتها دول، من سره الزمان سأته أزمانه. وهذه الدار لا تبقي على أحد ولا يدوم على حل لها شانه. أيها الأحبة, we are continuing with our lecture series regarding the history of the Muslims in Andalus, the history of Muslim Spain and Portugal. In the previous lectures, Ikhwani Fillah, we were looking at one of the weakest periods of history for the Muslims of Andalus, and this is known as the period of the Ta'ifa states. The states of the Muslims in Andalus were divided into over 22 states. Ikhwani Fillah, in the year 478 of the Hijri calendar, as we mentioned previously, the year 478, we lost a city that is the middle of Andalus, which is the former capital city of the Muslims in Andalus, the city of Toledo, in Arabic, Tolaytila. So we lost this great city of Tolaytila that is in the middle of Andalus. And the Muslims all over the world were shaken by this event. How is a country or city of Muslims conquered from the middle? You don't conquer any country or any state except from the borders inwards. But this was conquered right in the nucleus or in the middle of the state. So this really shook the Muslims all over the world in the year 478 of the Hijri calendar. To add on top of that, the southern state of Sevilla, of Ishbilia, was besieged by Alfonso VI, the king of Castile. He besieges it for months. Then the leader of Sevilla, al-Mu'tamid ala Allah ibn Abbad, he writes a letter, one line, that makes the entire army of Castile and Alfonso VI go back. He says, Wallahi la'in lam tarji' la'urawwihanna laka bimarwahatin min al-murabitin. Wallahi, if you do not go back, I shall get for you a fan from the fans of the murabitin. This one word, al-murabitun, really shook Alfonso VI, that he left Sevilla and went back to the northern state of Castile, and he left the Muslims of Sevilla alone. Thereafter, Ikhwani Fillah, we mentioned that the Muslims of Andalus, they had a conference, they had a meeting. All the leaders of the different states, they were meeting in Cordoba. And they disagreed amongst themselves. Should we seek the help of this Murabitun, or the leaders of North Africa, or not? So a group of them decided to go down to Morocco and seek the help of the Murabitun. Thereafter, Ikhwani Fillah, we started mentioning this great group of Muslims, the only empire that was formed by scholars. If you asked which is the only empire that was formed by scholars, or maybe it can be debateful, but this is the empire of scholars, the empire of the Murabitun, that was started by the Imam Abdullah ibn Yasin al-Jazuli rahimahullah. This is what we mentioned last night. Just in summary, what you cooked yesterday. So the year 440 of the Hijri calendar began. Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin al-Jazuli comes all the way from Tunisia to the south of Mauritania, the north of Senegal. And he started teaching the Muslims. Students is one student, two students, 5, 10. By the time he finishes his da'wah and he is killed in the year 451 of the Hijri calendar, he has 12,000 followers, true Muslims. People are following the correct deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the same way that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam started his da'wah. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was in Mecca doing the da'wah in secret in Darul Arqam. Muslim comes 1 or 2 or 3 until the ummah became so great, especially when we go to the city of Medina. That is when we get strength as Muslims. And the Prophet ﷺ established his state from Medina. This man, Abdullah ibn Yasin al-Jazuli, started establishing his state in the southern of Mauritania, the north of Senegal, from the year 440 to the year 451 of the Hijri calendar. Khanifillah, we said last night that we in Africa, the only continent in the entire world that is a majority Muslim continent. Regardless of what the census say or the population say, the only continent in the entire world that is a majority Islamic continent is the continent of Africa. Europe is not, of course. North America, South America, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, the seventh continent, Africa, we are a majority Muslim continent. And it was after the favor of Allah upon us as African Muslims, it is due to the efforts of these three men, Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin al-Jazuli, Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, and Amir Yussuf Ibn Tashfin rahimahumullah. So the year 451 of the Hijri calendar, Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin is killed, he dies, a shaheed inshallah. The new leader of the Muslims is Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, one of the greats of Muslim history in Africa especially. This man, Khanifillah, he leads the Muslims from the year 451 to the year 453 in that area of the world, south of Mauritania, north of Senegal. Then he hears that there's some khilaf, disagreements, conflict amongst the Muslims in the south of Senegal. So he tells his cousin Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, you take over leadership as I go deal with this khilaf of the Muslims in the south, because khilaf amongst Muslims is shar, it's evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ, that you should make peace amongst yourselves as Muslims. So it's always good to reconcile two Muslim groups that are fighting for whatever reason. Even if one is correct, one is wrong, always try bringing the Muslims together. It is one of the things that is rewarded a lot. Even if you have to use your money, you can deduct it from your zakah calculation because you're making peace between societies. So Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni descends to the south of Senegal, and he makes peace between these two groups of Muslims that are in conflict. Then he discovers to his Shaykh that there are most people living in this part of the world, West Africa, that Islam has not reached. People who are worshipping trees, they're worshipping ancestors, they're worshipping stones, mushrikun, pagans. Islam, the da'wah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam promised that there is no area of this world except Islam will enter. Bi'izz al-aziz or bidhull al-dhalil, has not entered this land. I take upon myself this wajib of bringing the da'wah to these people of West Africa. So he starts giving da'wah fillah, calling the people to tawheed, calling the people to la ilaha illallah. And he continues calling the people to fillah from the year 453 of the Hijri calendar to the year 468 of the Hijri calendar. 15 good years have passed. Meanwhile, Yussuf Ibn Tashfin is waiting for Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni to come back. Yussuf Ibn Tashfin is the leader of the Muslims south of Mauritania, north of Senegal. So 1 month passes, 2 months passes, Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar is not back. What do I do? He has gone southwards, let me go northwards. He looks around at his society. There are people who claim to be Muslims, the Berber tribes, the Amazigh. There's a tribe, it's called the tribe of Ghumara. This tribe of Ghumara has a leader called Hayyim ibn Mannallah. This man Hayyim ibn Mannallah claims to be a prophet. He says, I believe in the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but I do not believe la nabiyya ba'di. I don't believe that there cannot be a prophet after him. I am a prophet after him. And I have been brought with the following message. Number one, there is salah will only be twice a day. So he tells his people who are born Muslims that they should only pray 2 times in a day, in the morning and in the evening. Number 2, he tells them that I have been given the Quran in the language of the Amazigh, the Berber language. We have a new Quran for us to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with. Number 3, he tells them there's no more wudu. You don't need to do wudu. Number 4, you don't need to take a bath from janaba. Number 5, there's no hajj. Number 6, you cannot eat eggs from any bud. Number 7, you can eat a female pig, not a male pig. Number 8, you cannot eat a fish until you slaughter it, like the Islamic way of slaughtering a fish. What is the Islamic way of slaughtering a fish? So he comes with absurdities, and people still follow him because of these tribal allegiances, and they follow this man from the tribe of Ghumara. So the Yussuf Ibn Tashfin observes this. Then he looks at another tribe, a tribe of Barghawata, or however it's pronounced, Barghawata. Amongst them is a person called Salih ibn Tarif ibn Sham'un. Whenever you hear Un, know that is a Jew. Any person who comes with a name that's Un, you know that is definitely a Jew, has an asas or a foundation of Judaism. So this Salih ibn Tarif ibn Sham'un also claims to be a prophet. But he's the opposite of this Hayyim ibn Allah. He makes obligatory upon them 5 salahs in the morning and 5 salahs in the evening. He's claiming to be a prophet of Allah. La'natullah alayhima. Number 2, he says that you Muslims are not allowed to marry Muslims. You can only marry non-Muslims. Number 3, it is obligatory for every man to go to the saloon and plait their hair and make their hair in a nice manner. And he makes many other rules. This is what Yussuf Ibn Tashfin is observing in the south of Morocco, the north of Mauritania. People who are claiming to be Muslims. Then he looks at another tribe, they are worshipping sheep. They're worshipping al-Ram. The same way the Bani Israel started worshipping al-Ram when they were rescued from Fir'aun and from the Red Sea and they crossed over into Canaan, they started worshipping the sheep or the Ram. So this is the situation. Then he says, Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, it is wajib upon me also to spread the da'wah of Islam to these people and to bring la ilaha upon them. So he starts calling them to Islam. Of course they fight him, they rebel, they cause war. But this man is not easy. He has 7,000 Muslims only. Remember in the year 453 when Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni left, 14,000 men, army. 7,000 was taken by Abu Bakr ibn Umar and 7,000 remained with Yussuf Ibn Tashfin. So he starts fighting them, calling them to Islam, calling them to da'wah. Jihad fi sabilillah litakuna kalimatullahi al-ulya. That's the purpose of jihad, so that you can make this da'wah, this light of Islam to reach. It's not possible for you, Ikhwani fillah, sometimes to take food to a people, sometimes take drink to a people, sometimes to take this spiritual iman that they require to a people, except by the strength of power. Because some people will block this khair. They don't care if the people starve to death. They don't care if the people die out of thirst. They don't care if the people die as mushrikun, as pagans. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed that you bring the jihad fi sabilillah hatta takuna kalimatullahi al-ulya, so that the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes above everything. So he fights his people, and he continues spreading the da'wah. In the year 468 of the Hijri calendar, Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni comes back to this small state that's based in the south of Mauritania, the north of Senegal. And he discovers, to his surprise, that Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, his cousin, the new leader, has spread Islam so wide and so far that Islam now, the da'wah they're calling on, the da'wah of Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin al-Jazuli, the da'wah of the true Islam has spread to the land of, the full land of Senegal is under his control. The whole of Mauritania is under his control. The whole of Algeria is under his control. The whole of Morocco and the whole of Tunisia. 5 great Islamic states or countries have all fallen, and they are now under this Imam, Yussuf Ibn Tashfin rahimahullah. He also discovers that a new city that has never been there before, the city of Marrakesh in Morocco, has been built from the ground up by this man, Yussuf Ibn Tashfin. And the first thing, Hanifillah, that he did when he built this city, he built a mosque. The first thing that he did is he built a mosque. And he built it with clay bricks. Remembering how the Prophet ﷺ, the very first thing when he did, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ entered Medina, they built the mosque of Quba. Thereafter, the Masjid Nabawi. The very first mosque was built is Quba, then Masjid Nabawi. So he built the mosque. Then he looks at him again. He sees that the army he left, 7,000 only. Yussuf Ibn Tashfin now commands an army, just the cavalry, the horsemen, 100,000. Infantry, you can't even count. Cavalry or the horsemen, 100,000. And he finds this man, Abidan, Zahidan, a worship of Allah. They fast Monday, Thursday, Qiyamul Layl, they never leave. Qawaman, Sawaman, he's a person of Qiyamul Layl. The day he fasts, person of ibadah, zuhud. He does not care for this dunya. All his care is about la ilaha illallah. Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni looks at this man, Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, and he does something that is very strange, in all of human history, apart from the Muslims. He says, Anta awla bil imarati minni. You are more worthy of leadership than myself. You are the new leader of the Muslims in this area, and I am one of your servants. Then he leaves. Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni leaves this land to his cousin because he has found that he is worthy of leadership. And he descends, to Senegal and into West Africa once again. As he descends to Senegal, he discovers, there are Muslims, there are people Islam has not reached. He enters over 15 countries in West Africa and takes the da'wah of Islam to all of these countries. He enters Guinea-Bissau. He calls the Muslims to Guinea-Bissau to Islam. He enters Nigeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, Togo, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Benin, all these countries, Cameroon, Chad, Central African Republic, all these countries in West Africa and Central Africa, all of them enter the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal because of the fadl of Allah Azza wa Jal. ثم بجهود هذا الأمير هذا البطل Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni. Islam had entered Nigeria some time back, but it hadn't spread so much. He is on brought Islam the second time to the land of Nigeria. The highest population of Muslims is in this part of the world, North Africa and West Africa. That's the highest population of Muslims in Africa, not in the world. In Africa is North and West Africa, with Nigeria probably having the largest population of Muslims. Every single time someone does ibadah, worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fasts, prays, recites the Quran, learns al-Fatiha, they get the thawab, but a copy of that thawab goes back to Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni and his Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin al-Jazuli. This was his way, until he passed away. He was killed in the year 481 of the Hijri calendar, a period of strength and glory for the Muslims in West Africa and North Africa, Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni. Let's go back to the year 478 of the Hijri calendar. In the year 478 of the Hijri calendar, the overall leader of West Africa and North Africa is the Amir Yussuf Ibn Tashfin. The Muslims of Andalus are going through a lot of difficulties because of the problems that they created for themselves. Tulaytila, as we mentioned, the city in the middle of Andalus has been taken to them. Ishbilia to the south has been besieged for months and they left. So they had a conference in Andalus. All the leaders were called. Most of the leaders rejected the idea of the Murabitun to come, these brothers of theirs to come to enter Andalus to assist them. Why? Because they feared that these people will come and take over their lands from them. So they did not care about the Muslims, they were caring about their thrones and their positions. And this is something that comes many times. If you look at someone like the Abbasid Khalifa, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, he was a scholar, he was an abid, but once he got that chair, that throne, he changed it. He became an oppressor. He whipped Imam Malik and broke his hand. This chair is something that you're supposed to run away from. If you're given rulership, try keeping away from it. So it's very dangerous for you to wake up one day and say, I'm running to be an MP, a governor, an MCA. It is not an easy thing that you're setting yourself to do. You shall be asked a lot of questions. Every person within your area of control, be they Muslims, non-Muslims, even animals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about that cat that died on that particular day. Where were you as the leader? You shall be asked all these questions. So it's not an easy task. So the Muslims in Andalus, they gather. All of them refuse this. We can't ask these people to assist us. Al-Mu'tamid ala Allah ibn Abbad, ikhwani fillah, he gives a khutbah. He says, Wallahi, inni la uhibbu an ul'ana fi manabir al-Muslimin. Wallahi, I do not love for a day to come that the Muslims will cast me on the mimbar. I wish this is a lesson that every Muslim leader should take this word. You should always fear that there's a day Muslims will come and make dua against you. Or they will wake up at night and make dua against you. Why? Because you caused more harm than benefit for the Muslims. You are a kha'in, you betrayed the Muslims, you allied yourself with people who spilt the blood of Muslims, took the property, dishonored Muslims, yet you wish for the Muslims to pray sincerely to Allah, for Allah to have mercy upon you. No, they will pray for your destruction and the destruction of your progeny, and they will curse you for centuries. Wallahi, there are people who died 1,000 years ago, 1,200 years ago. Still now, as Muslims, when we remember them, we curse them. Why? Because they caused so much harm to the Muslims that we don't have a good memory of them except to curse them and to wish Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cause them every harm in the hereafter. So this man, he says, Wallahi, inni la uhibbu an ul'ana fi manabir muslimin. This is a day, a historic day, and I do not want to miss such a day that it ends up me being cast on the member of the Muslims. Wallahi, لأن أرعى الإبل في الصحراء المغرب أحب إلي من أن أرعى الخنازير في أوروبا. Wallahi, it is more beloved for me to look after the camels in North Africa as a slave than to look after the pigs in Europe. I will go down to North Africa and seek the help of this Murabitun. Even if they come and take over our kingdom, no problem, as long as Islam remains upon this land of Andalus. So, a group of scholars, a group of ministers, they gather, they go down to Marrakesh, they go to Morocco, and they meet the Amir Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, rahimahullah. The Amir Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, was 78 years of age. When he hears this ulama, they have come to seek his help, he is glad, he is so happy. He says, you've not come to seek help from me, rather you have come to bring me blessings, bring me barakah. And this is the thing that Muslims, the true people who understand the deen, when a poor person comes to ask you for money, it's not you doing a favor to them, it is them doing a favor to you, because they have opened for you a gate of rahmah, a gate of seeking Allah's mercy. How many people someone sits at night, has so much difficulty, and the first person he thinks, he goes, I have to go to Umar, I ask him for some debt so that I can come out of this problem. He didn't think of anyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not cause him to think about anyone except you. That is a favor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you. And Yussuf Ibn Tashfin has the same perception. He says, Wallahi, you guys have granted me greatest favor to fight fi sabilillah, to defend the honor of the Muslims, to return the lands of the Muslims. Wallahi, you people have honored me. In my old age, 78 years of age, I shall go to Andalus to assist you. So, Ikhwani fillah, he is the ruler of the entire of West Africa and North Africa. Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, whenever he used to call for jihad, he used to have an army of over 500,000 Muslims joining him, as mentioned by Ibn Kathir in al-Bidayah wal-Nihaya. He himself, Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, had an army of over 100,000 soldiers. How many people did he cross with to the Jabal Tariq into Andalus to rescue the Muslims of Spain and Portugal? He only crossed an army of 7,000 Muslims. Only 7,000. The same way his great-grandfather Tariq ibn Ziyad did in the conquest of Andalus. 7,000 Muslims, true Muslims, Rijal, la tulihim tijaratun wa la bay'un an dhikrillah. Men, quality men. 7,000, they crossed to Jabal Tariq. As they cross in Khanifillah, the Mediterranean becomes violent. And they're sure that they're going to die. The ship is going to capsize. He stands up, kneels before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and makes the following dua. Oh Allah, in kunta ta'lamu anna fi uburina khayran lil-Islam wal-Muslimin fasahil lana. Oh Allah, if you know our crossing from Africa into Europe, into Andalus is good for the Muslims and Islam, then make it easy for us. Wa in kunta ta'lamu ghayra dhalik. And if you know other than that, فَجْعَلْهُ صَعْبًا عَلَيْنَا فَصَعِبْ عَلَيْنَا عُبُورَنَا إِلَى أَنْدَلُسِ. Make it difficult for us to cross into Andalus. Once he raised his hand to Allah, when the Jabbar al-Ard, the person who is the most powerful of earth, humbles himself to the one who is powerful over entire dominion of earth and the heavens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely answers. Immediately the Mediterranean Sea, it stabilized, and the weather became excellent, and they crossed into Andalus. And the very first thing he did, when he entered Andalus, he made sujood shukr. He praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanked him for granting him this favor that other people have not been granted. As the news reaches the Muslims of Andalus, the ruh al-iman, the iman enters their hearts once again. And I remember the glorious days of Islam, the days of Khalid ibn Walid, the days of Nu'man ibn Muqarrin. They remember the days of victory, of Izzah lil-Islam wal-Muslimin. So one Muslim comes out from Sevilla, another Muslim comes out from Cordoba, another Muslim from Portugal, from Batailleos, all of them to join this army. An army of 7,000 quality men to meet the king of Castile, Alfonso VI, the arrogant tyrant. This army of Muslims grew from 7,000 to an army of 30,000 Muslims by the time they reached the kingdom of Castile. 30,000 Muslims, true Muslims, led by Yussuf Ibn Tashfin, and from the leaders of Andalus, Abdullah ibn Bilqin from Granada, al-Mutawakkil ibn Aftas from Batalayos, and Mu'tamid al-Allah ibn Abbad from Sevilla. So an army of 30,000, they meet in a place called Zallaqa. Zallaqa means in Arabic a place that is slippery. So they meet in Zallaqa versus the king of Castile. The king of Castile, when he heard the Muslims are coming into Europe, he went around Europe sending ambassadors. So armies came, help came from England, from France, from Italy, from Germany, and he managed to gather an army of 60,000 soldiers from the entire Europe, including his kingdom of Castile, to meet the Muslims in the Battle of Zallaqa. Ikhwani fillah, this is one very famous battle in Islamic history that some scholars say this is one of the greatest battles ever fought in Islamic history, that's almost equal to the great battle of Yarmouk, where Khalid al-Walid and Abu Ubaidah Amr ibn Jarrah defeated the Byzantines, or the battle of Qadisiyah, where the Muslims led by Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas defeated the Persians in the battle of Qadisiyah. So this battle of Zallaqa, ikhwani fillah, happened in this year 479 of the Hijri calendar. Ikhwani fillah, the Muslims slept that night, and one of the scholars, he saw the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam in a dream, and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam gave him glad tidings of what shall happen in that battle. Ikhwani fillah, what happened in this great battle of Zallaqa, and how were the Muslims so victorious, and what happened thereafter after this battle versus Castile. This is what we shall look at our forthcoming lecture, inshallah, next week on Friday. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.